We are here for developers inside of the AEC industry. And I mean that, programmers. You might be a visual programmer or a language programmer, but we're here to serve and provide content for you. That one of our fellow organizers, Libo, is going to be speaking about Airtable and how to use that API. He actually builds the Your Desk University website. But when we were talking before the show, you were talking about how some of the things to dive into and to learn inside the AEC are like really complicated.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, if you've watched some other Your Desk presenters and some of the things that they're presenting, like, BIM and construction, it's a pretty sophisticated world. There's a lot of things to know just before you even start working with the APIs and the technology. One thing that I really like about Airtable is that it's really simple, really flexible, and it's a great entry point if you're just getting your feet wet, so you don't run into all of these blockers and all of these things that you need to kind of read a 90-page documentation just to understand. My number one tip for the audience is now is always the best time to learn to code. So if you're excited about some of the things you're seeing on your desk, but it feels a little intimidating, you just need to get started, and before long, it'll feel very approachable to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. These tips have been helpful to me. One of the previous one recommended using GitLab Copilot, which I then promptly installed and started experimenting with. But yeah, getting into coding is not that hard, and you can extend it quite a bit. So
yeah.
Well,
I mean, especially recently with ChatGPT and all the OpenAI stuff, like it's the best time. It's truly the best time.
More approachable, and I think which is the amount of sheer content on YouTube. Right before this was really hard. I think going back a long time, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, there was not as much open source education like MIT. I don't remember when they posted all their stuff.
Yeah.
All the other software development. But then on YouTube these days, as far as like the getting started, like the first step, there's a lot out there.
And even stuff like Your Desk, right, which is topical to kind of our industry. I think before, like, as I guess I was learning, you had to kind of like learn from other people and then try to apply it to what you do. But I think one of the great things about Your Desk is that it is, very niche into the industry, and it's really relevant to what we do from day to day.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Let's see what you have for us. Let me find the screen share.
All right. Yeah, I gotta put now. Now I can't see
share your screen again because I stole it. I think maybe we lost you. Are you able to share your screen?
Yeah. Let me redo it. Entire screen. Here we go. Do you see it? Do you see yourself?
Yes. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome.
So Airtable.
Yeah. Are we ready to go?
We're ready to go.
All right, awesome. So the title of my talk is Easy Mode with Airtable API. Hopefully, I will convince you before the end of this talk that it's extremely easy to get started and you don't have an excuse. My big goal in almost all my talks at events like this is to get people in the audience coding. You might be sitting there watching all this stuff go on and you might be a little intimidated, but what I want to convince you to do is to code, to get really deep into the tech, and hopefully we'll see you on the next season of Your Desk as a presenter. I think we now, especially in a post-pandemic world, use a ton of digital tools. No matter what part of design or documentation or even just office communication, you're oftentimes using a lot of digital tools. And if you're anything like me, a lot of times what happens is you're moving data from one application to another. Usually this is export import, copy paste, or even sometimes just manually typing from one to the other. And as you do this a lot, it gets really annoying, but also there's got to be a better way. What I like to say is that with a little code and a little bit of data glue, you can automate a lot of the things that you're doing. individual tools are really great for the thing that they're built for, but especially in our workflows, we often use many specialized tools. So when you're in any of these workflows, I want you to think about two things. What is the data that you're passing between the tools, and how can we apply just a little bit of code to make it easier? I'm a big fan of Airtable, mostly because Airtable is incredibly approachable and easy to use. It's a no-code data collaboration tool, and beyond spreadsheets, it's a relational database. It's easy to use, easy to expand, and most of all, as you expand it, the API expands with you, and it's incredibly easy to use and adapt to all of these uses. So I will give you a quick crash course on what Airtable is, how we can do it, and then show you how what you do in Airtable relates to the API that it creates. So
I'm going to interrupt
sorry,
you there because one of the things about Airtable that we're able to use, and even in this setup, what you're seeing on YouTube right now, some of the content here comes live from Airtable. It's no coding. It's just a database that has cards, and I think I saw, maybe I'm stealing your next slide, but it has cards that you can kind of preview the data online, but then you can make a web link from that data and then bring it into something like this. So I'm gonna just disappear for a moment. Actually, I guess I'll stay on, but Libo will. So what you're seeing below here, this right here, these are little Airtable cards with each of the speakers from this season that we've just uploaded the images, and then their company logo and their name. I know it's super, super tiny on YouTube, but kind of an interesting thing. So sorry, Libo, I know you didn't get to see that. But that little banner that goes across YouTube and a few other things are all actually websites from Airtable that we've just incorporated into this. So anyways, back to what you were saying.
No, I think that's a great example. Like, once you get started and you can imagine little use cases, it's really easy to kind of start playing with it and generating all kinds of things that you want. So here I created a demo base. When you start, you'll have, I guess a base is a collection of tables. So when you start a new Airtable base, it'll have an example table. It usually has these fields. So what you can start doing is, adding other tables, say, a people table. And the fields are very customizable as well. So, people have names like Timon or Libo or John. And you can add other things to tables. So each table is a representation of kind of the object that you're tracking. And each field is a property of kind of that object. So I guess let's say company, right? Because we all work at companies. And companies, I guess we can do a single select, a single line text. So, Timon works at Walter P. Moore. I work at Catalyst DI. And, we can go on and on. What's also great about Airtable is you can create relationships. So let's say, I wanted to add more information about the company, but I don't want to repeat the information on kind of the table. Let's say, Colton, who works with me at Catalyst DI. Sorry. Right. If we have like other company information, it's now repeated. But what Airtable is really good at is we can now add another table called companies. And instead of having a text field, we can convert this to a link to companies. Convert, skip. And now if you come to the companies table, you'll see Walter P. Moore and Catalyst DI. And now, we can add more information like address to the company. I guess we can add years in operation, and that will be a number, and so on and so forth. What Airtable also does is, as you're building out tables, it'll build an entity relationship diagram for you. So you can see we have 3 tables, and our companies table is connected to our people table through this field. And as we're doing that, Airtable automatically updates a API for you to use. So here we see a direct mirror of kind of what we just created. We have a table, we have a people's table, we have a company's table. And when we kind of go into the documentation, you'll see our example data is right here. So whatever you're creating on this end, it's matched on this end. So you have that direct programmatic connection between kind of what you're building in the data side and what you can have access to from the API side. Cool.
Yeah.
Sorry?
No, you're good. Very cool. I was agreeing with you. I was actually thinking back to your comment about the kind of the first step from a coding. Like there was no coding involved, and you've already got a relational database that you can access in that way. And those linked fields are super powerful inside of Airtable.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see a little bit more from those in the example projects. So I built a few example projects just for your desk because I love this conference. I started all these projects just by asking ChatGPT. I think, hopefully everyone's used it a little bit, but, these could just start with questions like, oh, I want to attach X to Y. How can I do it in code? These applications are done, in 1 or 2 sittings. So they're really basic. And I built most of them off of just starter projects. They're also done using the free version of Airtable and Figma. OpenAI API is the only thing I'm paying for, but building out all these things and testing them in a really efficient way only really cost me 21 cents. So it's really cheap, really easy to get started. And as one of my good friends always says, now is always the best time to learn to code, and none of you have any excuses. So the first example is an auto marketing tool. So, if you're doing marketing, right, you're a lot of blog posts, tweets, things like that. And if you're using AI to generate that, sometimes you have to, copy paste or retype a bunch of prompts. But with Airtable, you can sort of automatically do that. So what we kind of saw before with putting the tables together, I built a prompts table. So a prompts table is, just a bunch of things that are organized in such a way to build a user message formula. So what it does is it concatenates, write a thing about a topic. Usually that's just the form of, a prompt. So here I have 2 example prompts, but, we can say you are your Desk University speaker. And let's say you're writing a Shakespearean, if I can spell, sonnet.
Don't worry, guys. I will not do Shakespearean tweets. At least not unless lots of people ask for it.
And I guess, let's say how awesome your desk is. And using Airtable's scripting extension, we can write a script that, hold on, I should run it from here. Oh, it's already running. Let's stop and run it from here. So it gets the prompt, retrieves the credentials, and then it sends the prompt to OpenAI API. And if everything works, because this is a live demo,
yeah, the best thing about live demos, I think someone in the chat should ask about that tab up there called secrets. Just noticed.
Yeah. So one fun thing about building tools for yourself is, you get to do all of these things that are not recommended, such as keeping secrets in a separate table. So I'm not going to click on it, but we can talk about that after.
Good call.
So here, you have your nice Shakespearean sonnet about how awesome your desk is. And, as Timon said, he's not going to write sonnets. So we can use the same prompt and swap it with, I don't know, let's say a Zen koan. You might write those, right, Timon?
That's possible. Usually, in my free time, just sit there writing Zen poems. But if ChatGPT can do it for me, I can just listen to the Zen poem and not write them for myself. So that's great. Is it writing? It is writing.
It's it's generating. I mean, maybe this is a little harder than a sonnet. Who knows?
Do you think though this might make my life a little bit easier because all those tweets Might be a little surprised how much time I spend thinking about them every time I post them. Don't
Yeah,
judge.
so here you go. A nice little Zen koan about your desk university.
Nice.
The desk you're looking for is not outside of you, but within. So,
Oh, snap. We do have a question.
mhm.
And I'm not familiar with Coda, so you might know this. But are the functionalities Airtable has that other docs like Coda do not?
um, I think there's a fair bit of overlapping features. But I think the key is like the things that I'm showing you. You can probably rewire a little bit to apply to whatever tool that you're using, as long as there's a way to hit the API, or most applications have like a scripting tool as well, so you can do that.
Mm, yeah. You know, I was using Click to Tweet and I used to post it in the chat. Now we're going to have a Click to Liboified OpenAI tweet, which will auto post for you. I mean, what more does AEC need? Sorry, I'm totally diverting us. But this is
No, no,
great.
no. And like if you look at the code itself, right? Very simple, like a little bit more than 100 lines, just because I have a bunch of comments in it, but super simple. Just takes the data that you have in Airtable, shoots it up to the OpenAI API, gets a response, and then loads it back into Airtable.
So kind of pointing out what you were pointing out there, for those who are not language scripters, you had like
Mhm.
3 sections, each with less than 20 lines of code, which was doing one of those kind of primary functions.
Yep.
So if I wanted to build this without the OpenAI part, or if I wanted to build this without another part, like it's just that 10 or 20 lines that does kind of each of those primary pieces.
Yeah,
I'm going to blow this up a little bit.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, if you wanted to use a different kind of chat completion API, you just have to change this code right here, and you're off to the races.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool.
Cool. So project one, project two. I like to call this BIM at home, because Revit is expensive, but we all love BIM. So this is built off of Figma, which I think we heard from some previous speakers. Hopefully you know have played around with it. You can get pretty far using the free tool. So I built this little plugin that syncs your Figma layout into Airtable. So if we click here, it's syncing up, and I think if we check our Airtable, it should be coming in. So, okay, 39 objects. And because it's syncing, we can start doing our layout. So let's say I want to put a couch here, a little rug, right? Let's do a little dining table. We need a few chairs. Let's see there. Let's do 6 chairs because we're very popular and we have great dinner parties. And, we need a desk because this is your desk.
That's
And
not my desk, but we'll let it go. This is what happens when you get organizers from your desk both on here. We just keep heckling each other.
yeah, so, we have our nice little layout, and, it's synced back into Airtable. And because we say, we want to start assigning products to these instances that we just laid out, we can select the instance type, and then it'll have all the names. And I went on IKEA because, I love IKEA, to find a bunch of, products, right? I have, the name, the SKU, what they are, and then a price. So now I can start attaching these to what we just laid out. Let's see. Our desk is a long desk, dining chair here, and we can copy and paste that there. Let's find our nice dining table, our
And
nice
that's one of those
rug.
linked fields you were talking about earlier, where you
Yep.
already have the table somewhere else and you're just kind of connecting it in.
Yes, sir. And swivel chair. Okay, there we go. So usually at this point, right, you might want to go purchase this. So I used Airtable's page designer to build a nice PO. You can see all of our accounts are there, all of our products are there. You have the total price, and you could just now sign in and send it off. But usually, before you send it off, your manager might want to come in and make a design change, right? So he's like, I would prefer this to be a co-working space. This is a nice PTSD dream that I have from a previous place I used to work at. But let's turn this into a co-working space. What do you need? You just need a bunch more desks. Let's see. Right, and because this is still syncing to our Airtable, if we go back here and check our product assigning table, you see a lot more instances of task desks and chairs, but you also see that we've deleted some things from our layout. So here we can then attach our task chairs to task chairs, and then our desks to our desks. And if we look at our PO, everything's updated. You see the rug is out, the sofa's out, the bed is out, but now we have a lot more desks and chairs, and you can send this PO out without double checking, going back and counting, and all of that stuff. Everything's connected.
That is interesting. I've never seen Figma connected, basically BIM and Figma. So help me understand if we can kind of dive into how this problem works, right? Because I think that's like the logical part that sometimes people are curious about, which obviously you're probably building something slightly differently, but you can relate the logical way that this is handled. So there's data that's associated to each of those blocks, and then you're reading what's inside or not inside that rectangle, or is it that entire, how is that part working?
Yeah, so Figma works based on nodes. So everything that's on Figma is a node. So you can see there's frames, there's components, there's instances. And like Revit, Figma has this relationship between components and instances, which is what I'm leveraging to kind of get the objects. So these up here are a library of components. I pulled this off of just the Figma marketplace. So someone else built all of these components. I kind of simplified them so they're a little bit easier to operate with. But every time you copy a component into, say, your layout, it becomes an instance. You can see it indicated by this little square here. And if we just, in Airtable, filter for all the instances, we have, all the pieces that we're laying out. And that's basically it. Once the instances are kind of attached to the products, I can then leverage that relationship to create a PO, which is a collection of all the products. And then I do a roll-up of the price to get the PO total. But within Airtable's page builder, because it works with relationships, you can put an entire table, a related table into Airtable, into the page. So everything that's in the relation with the columns that you selected will come through as well. So once
and
you
this
kind
is
of
all in the free version of Airtable. I was
So-
not expecting this type of like a report out to be in the free version.
you only get to use one extension per base. So you got to be careful what you use it for. But
Okay.
Once you get familiar, piecing all of this stuff together is pretty fun to try to figure out.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
All right. So third project.
Let's go for it. And
All right.
I'm looking at the chat. If you have any questions, anything you want, obviously post it in there. If you have an idea for a project and you just want to ask Libo, like, how would you pull off, project X? Feel free to put it in the comments. You could also put it in the chat, in the comments below if you're watching this afterwards. We can come back and do a second round.
Yeah. I'm also very active in the Your Desk Discord, so definitely put me there.
Great place to post as well.
Yeah. So, if you have acquired all these skills, you might try to use these skills to look for a new job. And one of the most annoying things about looking for jobs is extracting what you need from job postings. So I think in the first project, we looked at taking data, forming it into prompt, and getting kind of that response back. But another thing you can use the OpenAI API for is to actually parse text. So let's say we want to, I don't know, apply for this principal software engineering job. We can come in, select all the relevant text, and this is built off of the Chrome extension starter project. So what this is doing is it's taking all the text, taking out the characters it doesn't need, and sending it up to the OpenAI API and saying, hey, we're looking for some specific fields from this job posting. Can you respond in a formatted JSON? So because it's live, gotta wait a little bit. Fingers crossed it works. So there you go, job posted to Airtable. If we come to our jobs Airtable, let's see. You can see principal software engineer, the job that we're just looking at, what company it's for, location, job description, job requirements, whether it's hybrid or remote, salary range low, salary range high. And because it's just kind of text interpretation, you can use this on other websites. So it doesn't have to be if you've ever built a scraper before, it's often pretty annoying to find the right pieces. But because we're doing it this way, let's say we want to be a product manager, Airtable, same thing, select all the stuff, click parse job, wait, fingers crossed.
Web scraping with OpenAI. That's what I'm thinking about for this. It's really interesting to be able to do that. I'm curious afterwards to understand. Maybe this is my nerd asking, but a little bit about how you get that JSON response from OpenAI. Is it just kind of built into their API? I haven't looked at their API at all, so it might be just built in that that's the response you're looking for, or is that just part of the prompt that you actually tell it that that's what you're looking for?
Yeah, so it's a part of the prompt. I'll show you after. So it worked. So here,
live 3 for 3, nicely done. Maybe 6 for 6. I don't know what we're at.
It's working, and let's do a LinkedIn one, and then while we're waiting, I'll go dig into the code a little bit. So same thing. Just select the relevant information, go in, click this, and we'll hope it works. But if we dive into the code a little bit, to your question, Timon. So if you haven't worked with the completion API before, there's two things that you give it. One is a system message, which kind of curates how it's going to respond, and the other is kind of your user prompt. So here you can see that I put output only JSON, no prose, and then it's just the prompt. It's like parse the following information, which is the text, which is up here, the structure of what we're trying to parse, and then from this text, so the text that we just highlighted. In doing this, hopefully, most of the time, the API will respond with a parsable JSON. So all we're doing is taking the string response and parsing it as a JSON and shooting that back into Airtable.
That's cool.
And one thing,
yeah, I didn't know about that parsable response part where you could say I noticed it said no prose, because I've looked at doing this a little bit before just from the chat bot. I don't think no prose is an option in the chat bot, right?
Yeah. So this is using the API, you just put it in the system content, and I think what the documentation says is that the API will respect the system message more than the user prompt. And because it's just a prompt, you could do funky things like return this in the form of a string, but in the format of city state. So then when we look at here, so 4 for 4, but all of the locations are in kind of that format, except for this one because Autodesk.
Texas, USA. I love it.
But yeah, so those are the three projects. We can kind of dig into them a little bit more. But one thing that's great is all of these docs are publicly available. Just go read them. And as you kind of learn more things about these APIs, you'll get more ideas of how to string them together. And I will also recommend a great website called find.com. It is like Ask ChatGPT, but one of the things it does let you do is it lets you customize the search. So if you're working with specific APIs, say like the Airtable API, you can take airtable.com and you can rank it higher than other websites. So when you're doing a search prompt, it'll prioritize searching that documentation over other things on the internet and bring you back the answers that you're looking for better.
That's fascinating. So I've gone to GitHub many, many, many times just to search it, like how an example of how a particular API is being used. Is that something you could hear? You could put like github.com as
Yeah.
one of the parsable elements, and I'm assuming they've just kind of cataloged, across the internet, and they already have this. It's not like they're going to those sites at that moment and going
They
to
actually
grab it.
are. So I think we can try that here. So let's say like I'm trying to build a job parser that posts to Airtable through the Airtable API. Can you give me starter code to get started? I don't know. Let's just say that. So see, it's searching Airtable documentation, and then it'll tell you what you need, and then it'll write starter code for you.
Pretty cool. I don't know. What do you guys think? Yeah, really, really grateful. Definitely hit the like button if you are appreciating what Libo's putting together here. I know I'm learning from this and grateful, and that's kind of one of the reasons why we keep doing this and why we keep it free is because we really want to educate ourselves, but also you, the audience, because we really think that AEC could be so much better. Like we can use these tools, and I know many of you believe exactly the same thing. And so yeah, Libo, I know you're in this. I totally realized I forgot to even introduce you at the beginning, other than as a collaborator. But this obviously is kind of an introduction in itself. But he is the Chief Technology Officer at Catalyst DI. If you look at his LinkedIn, they're a firm of about 20 people, consultants in the AEC industry. And we were talking earlier, he said a lot of their focus has been in supply chain management for construction, but not like locked in only on that. And I could see where in that kind of a field you'd be doing a lot of data management. And if Airtable is one of the places where you can do that quickly, that's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everyone probably working in the AC industry understands like how messy kind of the data environment we usually work in are. And I think part of this is Airtable is an easy entry point, but you can apply some of these workflows to a lot of the tools that you're using. I think Autodesk has actually been doing a great job recently with Autodesk Platform Services. And we've actually been using that API a lot to drive our workflows depending on how people use that common data environment for different parts of their workflow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You might be hearing my son waking up 2 floors up right now. So sorry about any interruptions that caused from that. I had another question about Airtable here.
Absolutely.
And I'm watching the chat if any others come in. But how, it's kind of a leading question, but Airtable can allow for coders to do part A and non-coders to do part B. Can you kind of talk about how you use that? If you kind of get where my question's going.
Yeah. So something that we actually do a lot at KDI is folks that are, much closer to the kind of customer workflow or, much more knowledgeable about how to build some of these workflows will work in sort of the table structure. So they'll build out, what the tables are, what kind of each of the objects are, how they relate to each other, what information is being tracked. But where their expertise might stop is like, hey, say, you're using DocuSign to approved documents in your workflow,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't want to always go back to DocuSign to check whether something is signed. Can we automate the status of a record through the status of a document in DocuSign? That's where someone like me would come in and kind of add a little code glue between those two APIs to save you kind of that effort of double checking.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm thinking of like how it's integrated with the Airtable website, which again, if you want to know more about that, or I was even thinking behind the scenes on OBS, like how do we make this website, how do we make this, YouTube thing happen? Even though there's a lot out there and that kind of gets out a little bit outside of our niche. But coming back to our website, when we started Your Desk University, right? You knew web development. I had no idea about how to pull off a website. And one of the things I've learned is that you don't have to do everything, right? It's sometimes helpful to have kind of people take on a different piece. And I'm so grateful to you and Jared for kind of bringing that together. When we first launched this in 2020, in like 1 month, it was just all hands on, like full steam ahead. That was great. But where I was getting with that is, so now we had a website, but it didn't really have content. It had a framework. But then we needed to line up speakers. We needed to line up, kind of get their images and their graphics, and they weren't coming to the software in this case, like the software developing or the web developer, to post all those things to make sure all that content is up there. So in Airtable, we have a field of like each of the names, each of the speaker titles, each of the session titles, all the different parts, and then.
Yeah, I'm actually in the Airtable right now. If folks want to see a little.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not sharing a screen. Let me pull it up. There we go. There's the Your Desk Airtable with all the different parts. You can kind of see some back a little bit. I don't know if the future stuff's in here, but.
Well, I don't want to give away any surprises.
Don't give away any. No, I'm just kidding.
So you can see
so
this.
We've got. Or go ahead. Go ahead. Explain. Yeah.
Yeah. So like Tim was saying, right? People, streams, sessions, about companies. So, we can drive the content of the website from here. And then all sort of the web front end is doing is coming to Airtable, pulling on this data and displaying kind of the relevant information in the relevant places, doing kind of web things on the web and doing data things in Airtable.
Yeah. So when a company changes, when a new logo comes up, we can just go into the company's page, change it in one place, and then it's obviously connected to the streams. The streams are what goes to the website, and it all kind of gets connected in that capacity.
And we're also using the free version of Airtable to run Your Desk as well, so you can do a lot with very little.
Yeah. And then I guess GitHub pages. I'm not doing that part, but that's how you host it.
Yeah. So it's hosted through GitHub Pages. It takes the data. This is like, I guess, getting into a little bit of the weeds. But like it'll build kind of we use something called Vue to build kind of the web templates and pages based on the Airtable data. And it's hosted on GitHub Pages, which is what kind of hosts the code to be accessible through the browser. And that's kind of how we make the loop.
Yeah, that's good. Actually, I was thinking back to the HypeR session where we talked about the framework that HypeR uses. Those kinds of frameworks are always really interesting things. How often do you use Airtable as opposed to other kind of backends? And how do you decide when to use one or the other?
So I like to use Airtable pretty often. Like anytime I need to mess with some sort of structure, because it's a familiar tool, I just start there. I think once it becomes a little bit more mature and I kind of know more about kind of what maybe more sophisticated tool I need, I might move into a database, maybe something, like Mongo or Postgres or Firebase is another one of my favorites. But really, like, unless your problem is like really sophisticated and really robust, Airtable can probably get you pretty far. So
yeah. This is great. Looking with no questions, I'm going to end here. Huge thank you, Libo, to you. For those who are tuning in, definitely check out this afternoon Jared is going to be talking, who's, by the way, right there next to Libo as they scroll across the screen below me. But he's going to be sharing a little bit about how he's integrating with the EC3 database. If you've watched this and enjoyed it, please hit the like button. I don't know if anybody noticed it, but I'm wearing my firefighter shirt. As we were preparing for this, we were talking about how BIM is so much firefighting. And little secret, but back in 2005, for 5 years, I was a volunteer firefighter in college. Just a side thing that I did that I really enjoyed. And so, yeah, we'll see Jared. I saw him in the chat. We'll see him later at 6 o'clock today, as he's going to be talking about working with, I think, EC3 and the sustainability API that's in there. No, wait, correction. He might be connecting with that, but he's going to be talking about Streamlit and how to make websites for those who aren't developing in JavaScript. So if you're just kind of familiar with Python, maybe you came from Dynamo or Grasshopper, got into Python, and you're moving into something a little bit more complex, he'll have that. And hopefully afterwards, maybe I can post a little box here so that people can see that once it's posted. So thank you very much, and we'll see you later.